The race to 8 starts at home, and with it, the Washington Commanders have a clear path to exceeding expectations in 2026.
You are Locked On Commanders, your daily podcast on the Washington Commanders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome inside today's episode of Locked On Commanders. I'm your host, your guy on the ground, David Harrison, and today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers, you can bet just $5 and you get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Head to FanDuel.com to get started today. On today's episode of Locked On Commanders, at least 2 spots where the Washington Commanders could go streaking in 2026, but all has to start with the first of 8 or more wins in the upcoming season. Of course, the NFL season schedule revealed at the end of last week. We got all of the 17 games that the Washington Commanders will play. We found out week 4 will be in London, Indianapolis Colts visiting, quote unquote, the Washington Commanders. Week 7 bye week. Also found out Miami Dolphins are going to be the preseason opener at home for the Washington Commanders. Then 2 weeks on the road at Detroit in week 2, and then at Baltimore in week 3. Baltimore, of course, the traditional preseason opponent for the Washington Commanders when they don't play in the regular season. So that is your preseason schedule. And I did confirm on X over the weekend, the Washington Commanders will have a joint practice session with the Miami Dolphins ahead of that preseason game. Joint practices, of course, all the rage for very good reason. I would not be surprised. Do not have confirmation one way or the other. So I'm not saying that there's not going to be joint practices with the Lions or with the Ravens. We know last year they tried to get one done with the Ravens. It didn't work out for whatever reason. Definitely didn't seem super professional on the side of the Ravens, but it is what it is. Not the first time, and wasn't the last time they would kind of go back on their word to another NFL team. I'm just saying, you know what I mean? But could still be joint practices with the Detroit Lions, or a practice, I should say, could still be a joint practice with the Baltimore Ravens. They've got new leadership there, so who knows, maybe it'll work out this time. But I thought we would follow up the schedule release, looking at a little bit of a win-loss total, projection. And listen, I've done early win-loss total projections on Locked On Commanders as an actual prediction before. I'm not afraid to make predictions, especially, in May and all these things, and I'm not going to kick myself too much about it if things don't go the way that I saw them going. However, this year, it's a little bit different just because we don't know, I haven't seen the scheme yet, right? We have not seen the Washington Commanders execute either offensive or defensive scheme. And to be truthful, even through OTAs, we're not going to really see the full scheme. Mandatory minicamp, we see a little bit of it. Training camp, we start to see a little bit more, things like that. But so it feels a little disingenuous to try to sit here and tell you that here's how many games I think they will win. So what I wanted to do is more so, instead of doing that, how do we get the Commanders to 8 wins, right? Where's the possibility of the Washington Commanders getting 8 wins? The over-under on FanDuel for their total win projection this year is 7.5 wins. So how do the Washington Commanders get to 8? How do they hit the over on that 7.5 wins? And to do so, I wanted to set some clear parameters, kind of what we're looking for, and then try to quantify as best I could the 8 games I picked out of this batch to tell you that these are the games I think the Washington Commanders have a shot at winning or could win in order to get to that 8-game win total. So it's at least rooted in as much reality as possible. I know this is all entertainment, and it certainly can be entertaining, but I want to bring you entertainment that's at least tied to some sort of reality. You know what I'm talking about? So what we're looking at and what we think is coming from a scheme base, and having talked to enough people and talked to enough players that are starting to learn the scheme, some of the other coaches and things like that, I'm pretty confident in what we think we're going to see is what we're going to see. David Blough is going to bring some Ben Johnson also, but look, there's going to be some Shanahan, some McVay, some Kevin O'Connell in there as well. There's going to be a major increase in pre-snap motion from previous years, reduced splits as well, where the wide receivers aren't necessarily on the far outside boundaries. They're in more towards the offensive line, kind of, condensed a little bit. I think you're going to have under center, more wide zone runs. Play action is going to be a much bigger part of the David Blough offense than it has been the Cliff Kingsbury offense. And this is going to help Jayden Daniels have to process less after the snap, allowing him to make faster decisions, just be more decisive as a quarterback. And then on the Daronte Jones side, obviously he's coming fresh off the Brian Flores tree. He's a branch right off the Brian Flores tree, but he's got leaves from Lou Anarumo, Mike Zimmer, and Marvin Lewis, and even some others. He's been in the coaching game for a long, long time. I think you're going to see a lot of simulated pressure, and you're going to see some zero blitz designs as well. No safeties up top, man-to-man across the board with a lot of heavy pressure. You're going to try to confuse and delay quarterback processing. Versatile linebackers like Sonny Styles, the 7th overall pick in the 2026 NFL draft, and of course, free agent Leo Chenal going to help him do that. Aggressive edge players like Odafe, Oweh, Charles Omenihu, Kayvon Chason also going to help him do that. And aggressive corners in the secondary, like Amik Robertson, going to help him do that as well. Those are all new guys coming in. Not that we don't love some of the guys that are coming back, but just those are the new guys that are going to help kind of really get this new scheme, I think, up and running. It won't be perfect, right? I don't think anybody should expect perfection from this thing in 2026 with two new coordinators who are going to be experiencing something kind of new for the first time almost every single week this coming season. I think it's going to be a growing process. There's going to be some growing pains. There's going to be some growing successes all the way to the finish line, like all the way through to January. I think there's going to be growth here. But if you're looking for 8 wins, I think there are games that we can specifically find talking points about to try to justify a prediction. If you want to go as far as to make a prediction today that these are the games the Commanders will win, I've got some evidence to why you can make those predictions, just knowing the style of play, style of players that are coming. And I'm going to start off with one that could be a little bit of a surprise, and it's going to be week 3 at home against the Seattle Seahawks. Now, I want to be clear here. If I don't talk about a game in here, and we will get to the games I don't talk about here in just a little bit, doesn't mean I think the Commanders are just book it going to lose, right? So we start off week 3 against the Seattle Seahawks. I'm not telling you I think the Commanders are going to lose in Philly or they're going to lose in Dallas. It's just when you look at the Seattle Seahawks, I have a little bit more interesting notes, I think, to kind of talk about with this whole situation. Having to travel to the East Coast for the Seattle Seahawks after they have a rematch with the New England Patriots to open the season, and then a division game, not just a division game, but a division game against a nothing-to-lose opponent like the Arizona Cardinals. They're going to play a very physical brand of football in 2026, and I think they're going to really look to take it at the Seattle Seahawks there in week 2. That only helps Washington's chances. The 1 p.m. Eastern time start time is 10 a.m. Pacific time. And that's not nothing, right? According to a study published on ResearchGate by the Journal of Strength and Conditioning Research, so people smarter about this stuff than I am, and maybe you are, traditionally, teams facing that type of shift in performance schedule, playing at 10 a.m. your time, have a dip in production in the first half of those games. Heavy motion, condensed splits like we talked about. They're not going to create blown coverage against a disciplined and very, very smart secondary match zone defense that Mike McDonald has there in Seattle, but using some of that pre-snap motion, you being creative in your run fit, it could create some advantages. Seattle likes to use 4 rushers a lot, and they like to stunt a lot. But if Washington can use more condensed formations, that makes the Seattle defense have to play more condensed as well, play a little bit more in the box. It tightens them up a little bit, which can help open up some of those outside lanes, not just for the run, but also for rollout passes for Jayden Daniels to hit the edge, maybe roll out, get people open against those match zone looks. Those are the types of things that the Washington Commanders could potentially do to take advantage of a defense like Mike McDonald's there in Seattle. The first half, I think, is going to tell the tale of this game fully, right? You need a first possession score. You need to come out strong. If the Commanders can take advantage of that 10 a.m. start time, it's going to be 10 a.m. when this game kicks off for the Seattle Seahawks, they're going to have a chance and potentially come out with a win that I think is safe to say at this stage would shock the world. Quote unquote. Next game up, I think week 4 against the Indianapolis Colts. The very next week, obviously, you're in London. The Colts have struggled with pass protection, communication in loud venues. And if you've never been to an international game, it's one of my favorite things about European football crowds that I remember from being a child growing up. Well, not growing up in Germany, but growing up at least part of my life in Germany and getting my first exposure to American football in Germany, truthfully, is how loud the crowds are. I can tell you from Madrid, didn't matter who had the ball, didn't matter who was winning, who was losing, what was happening. That crowd was absolutely energetic. The Indianapolis Colts have had problems in those types of environments. Daniel Jones himself actually talked about it last season. Now, he's had a very good amount of success against the Washington Commanders, right? 5-1-1 against Commanders in his career, who in his earlier part of his career, who couldn't pressure him. They couldn't pursue him, that Washington Commanders defense. This defense is built to do both. Jones has a career average of 5.3 yards per rush in his NFL career, but he regularly, as you remember, gashed Washington's old defense, heavier defensive lines, not a lot of athleticism, not a lot of spy ability at the second or even third level sometimes. Adam Peters has explicitly gone out and found a way to turn this defense into a unit that is perfectly equipped to face a guy like Daniel Jones, Odafe Oweh, Kayvon Chason, Sonny Styles, just to mention a few. Frankie Louvu can do it. You know what I mean? At the safety level, Will Harris can do that kind of stuff. You have an offensive line with verbal communication issues when they're in loud environments. That's going to be a problem for the Colts if they can't clear that hurdle early in the season. We'll have to see. So, again, you have those nonverbal cues that they're going to try to lean on. Daronte Jones can do a lot of things to confuse them, make them see different things. And additionally, Daniel Jones will be playing just his 4th game since tearing his Achilles. Not an easy injury to recover from. So it's going to play a big role as well, I think, in this game. So those are the first 2 wins. We're 20% of the way to 8 wins the rest of the path, and where I think the Washington Commanders could go streaking in 2026. Coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode of Locked On Commanders is brought to you in part by Indeed. Workplace chaos, deadline, stacking up, inbox overflowing, and the one position you have to fill is still open. When the pressure is on and you need the right hire, it's a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs, which is going to help you reach the people who actually fit what you're looking for. So you're not just hoping that the right candidate stumbles across your post. And in the minute that we've been talking, companies like yours have made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching, less stress, get more results. When you need the right person to cut through the chaos, this is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. And listeners of this show, you get a $75 sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium placement it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. So just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now. Support this show by saying you heard about it on this podcast. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire. This is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. 6 more games on the path to the Washington Commanders eclipsing the 7.5 win-loss total they're currently sitting at on FanDuel. Thank you for coming through for this episode of Locked On Commanders and Everydayers. Thank you for making this part of your daily routine, coming through for Locked On Commanders. If you haven't already checked out the Everydayer Club, I love that you get ad-free access. I love that you get the opportunity to text with me if you so choose to, because I love communicating with Commanders fans as much as possible, and you can do all that in the Everydayer Club. LockedOnCommanders.supercast.com to check out the benefits from both tiers, see which one fits you the best, and give it a shot. Again, LockedOnCommanders.supercast.com. So we're 2 wins into my 8-game roadmap to the Washington Commanders surpassing the 7.5 win total, looking at some scheme fits, looking at some historic stuff. And look, obviously the Washington Commanders are going to be a different team than they were last year. And some of these teams are also going to be a different team than they were last year. So if I tell you, like for the Indianapolis Colts, had some issues in some certain areas, it's because there hasn't been wholesale changes in that area of their game. Now, obviously coaches go, hey, we had a problem doing this. We're going to come in the next year with a plan. The New York Giants, however, have had wholesale changes. They are going to be a vastly different team. And I think that Coach Harbaugh is going to make them better, but I don't think it's going to happen overnight. I think that Daronte Jones, his scheme is perfect for setting that New York Giants offensive line, which actually had a better year last year than a lot of people realize. But I think he's the perfect D coordinator to come in week 5 and try to send them back to the bottom of the league where they belong. Offensively, running the ball against a vulnerable front 7 that only got softer in the middle this offseason. I think that's the way that the Washington Commanders sealed this victory against the New York Giants in week 5. The Giants have a relatively young center quarterback combo. Obviously, Jackson Dart, only in his 2nd year in the NFL. Their center's coming into his 3rd season in the NFL. So I think Daronte Jones is going to throw everything at them to test their communication, test their IQ, all that kind of stuff. Commanders fans, you are going to have a major role in this game. Like, you are going to have a major role in week 5, coming back from London, Giants coming to town. Giants fans travel very, very well. You got to keep them from filling those seats one way. Well, I don't care how it happens. That place needs to be loud as heck when that defense, or when the Commanders defense is on the field, so that that young center, young quarterback combo have as hard a time communicating as possible. No Dexter Lawrence on the Giants side of the defensive line is going to make the road to Plough a little bit easier for the offensive line, getting the running game going. I think that is, of course, going to be the key. And now remember what I said, just because I don't put a game on here doesn't mean I'm telling you they're going to lose it, because we're going to move from week 5 to week 10. And again, it's the New York Giants. This time it's at the New York Giants. Thursday Night Football, a short trip to New Jersey. To me, it's the second best way to do it outside of a short trip to Philadelphia. Like, if you're going to play Thursday Night Football, the best game for the Washington Commanders to play on the road Thursday Night Football would be Philly, because it's the shortest trip on their schedule every single year except for Baltimore. Baltimore's on the schedule. That's the only other road trip that could be shorter. If it's not going to be Philly, New Jersey, MetLife Stadium is the second shortest. Thursday Night Football teams on the road win just 41.2% of the time. However, sports science and analytics data shows you that when a road team doesn't have to board a long flight, change time zones, things like that, it absolutely matters. It doesn't guarantee a win, but to guarantee the Washington Commanders get over that 7.5 win hump, which I can't do. I can't sit here and guarantee what's going to happen, but I think that to get the best shot, you got to sweep the Giants. I think sweeping the Giants has to be kind of priority number 1. If Washington sweep the Giants, 25% of their work to getting to 8 wins is done. I think I said 20% earlier. 2 out of 8 is not 20%, it's 25%, whatever. Thursday Night Football tends to favor teams that can simplify their offense and get pressure. David Blough has already said he wants to make same things look different things look the same. That is literally the epitome of simplification. And Daronte Jones, I think he's going to love trying to put pressure, like I said, on that young quarterback center duo like we just talked about. Teams only get 3 days of walkthroughs before a Thursday game, so offensive lines don't have the ability to prepare for complex blitz packages like they do during a full week. I would not be surprised to see Daronte not necessarily throw the house at them in week 5, but throw like the shed. Like let's throw the backyard shed, maybe even the pool from the backyard at the New York Giants. And then week 10, we'll throw the house at them, something like that. Jackson Dart proved to be a very talented quarterback in 2025, finished with a 91.7 passer rating, 24 total touchdowns, but he also has a dangerous tendency to not just take contact, but like invite contact, hold on to the ball too long, put him in concussion protocol multiple times, led to turnovers, things like that. Daronte Jones' defense, not the defense to do that against. We'll see what Jackson Dart looks like in 2026. By running the same core foundational plays for David Blough, you dress them up different. Maybe guys in different locations, pre-snap motion looks different, things like that. I think you can get the advantage on the New York Giants coming to that Thursday night game. Our next win projection on the roster, our 5th one of the season, week 12 in Arizona. It's a long trip to the West Coast, 4:25 p.m. Eastern time kickoff. That's a 1:25 local Arizona time kickoff. Battle of 2 teams who are looking to prove that they're better than their seasons were last year. Both teams suffered massive levels of injuries at the starter level, things like that. Terry McLaurin and Antonio Williams, I think, are going to be able to do some good things against that Arizona Cardinals secondary, which I don't think is going to be very good. And, of course, you have non-mobile quarterbacks there in Arizona, whether it's Jacoby Brissett or whether it's Gardner Minshew or whether it's Carson Beck, whoever it is in week 12, they're not going to be able to run around the way that Kyler Murray did. Daronte Jones is absolutely going to tee off, I think, on that quarterback. Without a dual threat weapon, to keep him honest, there's no reason not to just get out there and get incredibly aggressive. Meanwhile, Arizona's defense gave up 488 points last year, worst in the NFC West. Not a surprise because they finished last in the NFC West. So, again, I think you take advantage of that secondary. Next up, week 13, the very next week, you're back on the East Coast, but you're still on the road at the Tennessee Titans. Again, this is another trip, but it is a short trip, less than 2 hours of flight time required. So it's not going to feel like that long of a trip for the Washington Commanders. O-line in Tennessee is still going to have problems this year. I project Sonny Styles is going to be able to shadow Cam Ward with a lot of effectiveness, I believe. And while Robert Saleh is, again, one of the best defensive minds in the game, he has a very aggressive brand of front 7 play. And I don't think he has the horses to cover all of the Commanders' weapons or keep Jayden Daniels corralled inside the pocket. So I just don't think they're going to have enough to get this done. The 7th win that I can see coming, week 15 against the Atlanta Falcons, potentially a cold weather game for the Atlanta Falcons, having to play that outdoors in Northwest Stadium. I think this is where David Blough gets heavier. I think this is where he gets more physical. I think this could be the game where you see Kaytron Allen maybe have his best game of the year, potentially. When David Blough pivots the offense to 12 personnel, 1 running back, 2 tight ends. That's where you get the 1. That's where you get the 2, 12 personnel, or 22 personnel, which would be 2 running backs, 2 tight ends. That one of those running backs could be an H-back. Hello, Ben Sinnott. Those packages are going to be good against the December wind, against the December cold, again, depending on what the weather actually looks like. And Kaytron Allen, part of the reason he ended up being Penn State's leading rusher all time is because of contact balance, his ability to move forward. There is data out there that suggests that when dome teams have to play in conditions 40 degrees or below, they win only 20 to 30% of the time. So this game would actually be beneficial if it was a little cold out there. FTN Fantasy showed me that Atlanta's defense finished the previous season, 2025, ranked 23rd in defensive rushing DVOA. This has rushing attack all over it for the Washington Commanders. And then finally, the 8th game of the year, I'm projecting a win for the Washington Commanders right now, even as early as it is, looking at scheme, looking at personnel, looking at changes for all these teams, the Dallas Cowboys. Hey, Dallas, you won 2 more games at Washington in 2025. Wow. But you suffered significantly fewer injuries. So the Cowboys were 7 wins bad because they were 7 wins bad. They have no excuses. According to FTN Fantasy, the Cowboys had 72.5 adjusted games lost, which tracks games missed by starters and high-end situational players, ranked 14th in the NFL. You're right in the middle of the pack. Nobody's going to feel bad for you for that. The Commanders came out with the 3rd most, 124.4 games. So I would reckon that if the Commanders could have a 72.5 adjusted games lost injury tally like the Cowboys did, they're coming out with more than 7 wins in 2025. I'd be willing to take that trip down that alternate dimension. We have no idea how healthy, of course, either of these teams is going to be in January, but if it's on paper and they're similarly healthy, Dallas is going to have flashbacks of Sam Howell playing for the Washington Commanders in Northwest Stadium in the final week of the season. But the difference is Sam Howell is going to be sitting on the Cowboys sideline wishing, or being thankful, I should say, that he's not out there having to handle Daronte Jones' blitz, or depending on what's going on with the Cowboys season, he might be out there having to handle Daronte Jones's blitz. And that's just the minimum to get to week 18 or to get to 8 wins by week 18. If you sweep the Cowboys at Washington, if you sweep the Cowboys in Dallas week 2 and then in Washington week 18, that's 9 wins. If you take even 1 from Philly, that's 10 wins. A West Coast trip to San Francisco is tough, but since the game is at 8:15 p.m. Eastern time, wouldn't be surprised to see DQ put his team on a later practice schedule leading up to the game, all those kinds of things. And of course, we've seen this team travel early, so we'll see if and when they decide to do that this year. We didn't put the Bengals on here, but that's the team that Washington surely compete with, as are the Texans, as are the Vikings. Despite the shutout last year, I put that more on coaching than anything else, and the Jaguars. So health is a big part of it, of course, but 8 wins, certainly doable. Even more is well within the conversation, including 1 or 2 winning streaks that the Washington Commanders could pull off in 2026. We'll dive into those areas of the schedule coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And we're doing that today thanks to our friends over at FanDuel. The NFL playoffs are here, and the NBA playoffs are here, and every possession matters. If you're looking to get even closer to the action, FanDuel has a great offer to get you started. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. That's right, turn $5 into $150 in bonus bets just for getting started. I like using FanDuel during the playoffs. Truthfully, I like using FanDuel all season long because it gives you everything you need all in one place. Whether you're desktop, whether you're on the app, you get the stats, the trends, the matchups, all before you make your picks, and then you can track it very easily while the game is going on. Even make your live bets. Makes the whole experience feel just a lot more informed, and you feel a lot more prepared. Whether you're looking at player props, you're just following your stars, or you're building your parlays, it's a lot of fun, and it's really easy. Now, you look at the website, find anything you want to wager on, and you're going to find something that is for you. So head to FanDuel.com to get started today. With FanDuel, play your game. Wrapping up today's episode of Locked On Commanders, talking about the schedule a little bit, not so much a win-loss prediction as much as it is just where is the path here for the Washington Commanders to get over that 7.5 wins that FanDuel has them currently sitting for their win-loss total. I identified 8 games for you, but we also left some games off the schedule that I think the Washington Commanders could certainly win. So like I said, just because they weren't on this 8-game breakdown doesn't mean I think the Commanders won't win or can't win those games. And Ravi actually came through the mailbag, said, where do you see the Commanders making a winning run? So where do we see the Commanders perhaps hitting a little bit of a winning streak? Well, I kind of went back to the 8-game forecast, right? We already have weeks 3, 4, and 5 on our 8-week breakdown. And for me, anything 3 games or more is a winning streak. So technically that's already a winning streak. It's a winning run, right? But Seattle obviously is going to raise the most eyebrows, and I think that's also going to be a big upset in the same. But if you get a win over the Cowboys in week 2 and you get a week 3 upset, then there's a shot at a 4-game winning streak heading into San Francisco. Obviously, if you win week 1, I mean, look, if they win 17 games in a row, it's a 17-game winning streak. But the Cowboys are definitely a beatable game, right? The Seahawks, like I said, that's the one that's going to raise some eyebrows and things like that. Nationally speaking, that would be the big upset. But really, when you look at the Commanders' schedule, there's not a lot of like truly eyebrow-raising upset windows here for the team. So we'll get into that in just a second, because we also have weeks 10, 12, 13, and 15 on our 8-game list. That's half of the 8-win projection that we talked about here. 10 against the New York Giants. I think 12 is Cardinals, 13 is Titans, 15 is Falcons, right? So you already have half the wins right there. Well, if you just plug in the other ones, 11 and 14 specifically, 11 is the Bengals, which is a winnable game on paper, certainly. I mean, the Commanders' defense this year, we hope, I fall short of saying expect, just because we haven't seen it yet, but we hope and we think is going to be better than either of the last 2 defenses we saw. And certainly the Washington Commanders defense 2024 did enough against Cincinnati Bengals, who did have T. Higgins, by the way. They also had Jamar Chase, by the way. They did enough against them in their home on Monday Night Football to allow Jayden Daniels, a rookie at the time, to put up enough points along with Terry McLaurin and Trent Scott, by the way, who's still and forever will be the first person to catch a touchdown pass from Jayden Daniels to win that game. So week 11, Bengals, absolutely winnable. Week 14 against the Texans, I think very tough defense there in Houston, but I think that is also a very winnable game on paper. So again, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. I mean, I didn't do the math right in my head. What is that? That's 6 games where you could see the Washington Commanders go on a 6-game win streak. Now, again, this is not a prediction, so I don't want to get crazy here and people are like, oh, like this guy is too close to the team. He just covers. He's just 6-game winning streak. Get out of here. That's craziness. Well, again, when you look at these games on paper and we use these win-loss projections as that paper, right? The Giants, the Washington Commanders have a 7.5 game win-loss total projection on FanDuel. The Giants also 7.5. The Bengals 9.5. So yeah, it's more, but it's only 2 games more. The Arizona Cardinals 4.5. The Tennessee Titans 6.5, one less. The Houston Texans 9.5. The Atlanta Falcons 7.5. So when I tell you they can beat all 6 of these teams, I'm not just pulling it out of nowhere. The win-loss totals will tell you that these teams that they play, even the Bengals and the Texans, who have 2 games more projections, they're not that far up the stratosphere, the NFL ladder, according to these odds makers and FanDuel, that is just inconceivable, right? The Vikings, after that in week 16, that's 8.5 win total projection, just 1 game more than the Washington Commanders, right? So we're not talking about the Commanders just being like in the double-A league here, to use a baseball analogy. It's not like the Commanders are double-A playing a bunch of MLB teams, right? We're talking about being in the same league, obviously. Now, in fact, the only teams that Washington plays that has more than a 2-game win-loss projection, and the reason I go 2 wins, because if you're 2 wins up, right? So if you are projected to win 9.5 and I'm projected to win 7.5 and I win one that I'm not supposed to win, and that one comes against you, we're now both sitting at 8.5. Right. So if I'm at 7.5, you're at 9.5, and I beat you, and I'm not supposed to beat you, we both now have our win loss total projections at 8.5. You follow the math? It's kind of like spades math, but hopefully you follow it. Right. So that's why I don't think 2-game margin of win loss projection is that it's not big. It's not big at all. It's literally 1 week can erase that margin if it's the right week. So the only teams on the Commanders schedule that have more than a 2-game win loss total projection gap between the Commanders are the Rams, who are projected to win 11.5, so it's a 4-game gap. The 49ers, who have a 10.5 game win-loss total, that's a 3-game gap. The Seattle Seahawks, also only a 3-game gap. And the Philadelphia Eagles, who have a 10.5, also a 3-game gap. So 3 of these teams, and granted that's 4 games because the Eagles twice, they have a 3-game difference between win-loss totals for the Washington Commanders. The Rams sit at the most with a 4-game difference. So that's 5 games, meaning to me that there are 12 games on this schedule that, without injury context, etc., are winnable in the sense that it's not going to be super newsworthy if the Commanders beat them. The Seahawks, yeah, that would be newsworthy. More newsworthy because of the championship, all that kind of stuff. The Eagles, sure. The Rams, sure. The Niners, sure. So if you tell me that you think Washington's going to win 12 games, I'm going to tell you that prediction is premature, right? But it's not impossible. It's not impossible at all. And there are several spots where the team could build up some momentum to steal one of those from one of those double-digit teams as well. You tell me the Washington Commanders come into San Francisco riding a 4-game winning streak, or, I mean, knock on wood, fingers crossed, all that kind of stuff, 5-game winning streak. That momentum can't help them get one against San Francisco 49ers. It absolutely could. If you ride that 4-game winning streak, I think it feels a lot less like David and Goliath and a little bit more like Cain and Abel as far as the matchup is concerned. So that's probably our last schedule. Again, I've talked to a couple of the All Access Everyday Club members in text messages. I'll probably do like a firm win-loss prediction once we get to like the end of the preseason and I see this scheme and I get to see this team in action a little bit more. But for right now, just kind of talking about what could be the route to 8 wins and where could some opportunities be for this Washington Commanders team to break off a winning streak, 3 games or more in a couple of different spots in 2026. So again, a long way to get to before we get to that actual spot, but a little bit of fun here talking about the NFL schedule, wrapping that up. Next time on Locked On Commanders, Jayden's going under center after being mainly shotgun his entire career. How impactful is that transition? We'll talk about that coming up next time on Locked On Commanders. I appreciate you coming back for that episode, coming through for today's episode and any other episodes that you choose to dedicate your time to. I appreciate you. And if you need me in between them, you can find me on X at dharrison82, on Instagram at dharrison_82, or you can simply just text me by becoming an All Access member of the Everydayer Club at lockedoncommanders.supercast.com. And to those everydayers, as I do every day, I appreciate you coming through yet again today. To everybody out there, thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. And until we meet again, if you're out and about, please be safe, be kind. We will talk again real soon right here on Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.